Hello and welcome back to another Anchor Up Devlog. Today in this video I'm going to be showing you all of the progress that I have made on my indie strategy puzzle game in the past 2 months. First I added turning patrol ships, then environmental weapon countdowns, then fixing some cog related bugs, then I added a new game mode, effects manager, procedural death animations for the enemies, and finally a portal weapon. First I added turning patrol ships, which were going to work by having these signposts with green arrows on them, also matching the type of sails that they have, and it would work by having the patrol ships run into these signposts and turn in their indicated direction. In the first stage where they're introduced, I also modelled this tree and added this particle effect. I also worked on a new level which was going to be centred around a bonfire in the middle. I thought this would add a nice bit of contrast from some of the daytime levels which came before it, so in the centre there is this glowing bonfire. This is also the first level which takes use of actually using the cogs as a door for a patrol ship. Next I added in the environmental weapon countdowns, but first I changed out the font in the main menu to be the Bowlby font, which is the font that I use in the actual logo itself, so it's kind of more in keeping with that. The environmental countdowns themselves are numbers that appear above the environmental weapons and count down how many moves until they fire. The main cog related bug is kind of summed up in this clip where it's pulled back 3 squares instead of the usual 1, and now I thought I designed the system already so that it'd take in multiple moves, but it hadn't, so it basically just loops through the amount of squares that it's moved in either direction and either fills in the squares in between or refills them in between depending on which way the cog is pulling. I then added a new game mode which was going to be one centred around collecting multiple gems around the map instead of like the usual collection one where it's just to get from point A to B. This I thought could add a new layer of depth to the tactility of gameplay, and I know this game vastly differs to the likes of Call of Duty and Uncharted: The Lost Legacy, but I know these classic linear experiences have added slightly more depth to the gameplay just by making it so the player can choose which objective they tackle first, and this also adds some more maneuverable puzzle solving. That is a terrible term for it, but basically it's like which order is the most efficient way of completing the level, which in this game does actually kind of matter in terms of ships are constantly spawning in, which means that the player does have to keep on their toes even when they're going to each objective and picking which objective to go to next. They could always face an encounter with an enemy ship. This means the player can't just take out all of the enemy ships and then choose which order to collect all of the items. I then added in a visual effects manager which can be accessed from any script as it's using a singleton pattern, and it has a method called spawn one time effect which can spawn in a particle effect either for using a weapon or even collecting an item like in the previous game mode. And if we go to the definition here, it has an input of a position, an effect, a delay, and it's using a namespace called like effect tags or something like that, but either way you can customize all of the stuff about the particle effect. I'm also probably going to have the effects manager refer to the sound effects manager, so that way in just one method that can be called anywhere it will do the sound effect and the visual effect. After having some problems with the usage of the Unity animation system, I decided to procedurally animate the enemies' deaths by offsetting their position on a sine wave over time based on their direction. This can be seen here with a smooth sway downwards. Next I started to make the portal weapon, which first started with making the model. I wanted it to look kind of fantasy and though it had been cut rough from stone, so I didn't go with a completely circular frame. I knew that with it being a portal, the visual effect in the middle actually mattered quite a lot as it had to be the standout thing for the weapon, so I spent a while working on this spiralling particle effect with changing colours. The spiralling is using the orbit parameter on the particle effect, and here is the end result. It's also using a sprite mask so there aren't any wandering particles. The way that I wanted the portal itself to work was by having it so it spawns portal where you shot it, and it also spawns portal either reflected in the y-axis across the map or reflected in the x-axis across the map. So that means that when a player enters it, it will get teleported to the other one. Now this raised quite a few issues with the premise alone. So what happens if the back of the ship, because I wanted the direction to be maintained, is actually going to be in a wall? So what I ended up having to do was check clockwise which direction it could fit in the space, but there's also other issues, so dynamically I wanted to do this so when the level creation system is added in, if some player thinks that it's quite funny to try and trap their friends in an area, well then actually you can't. It's checked that you have to be able to move out of that space in order to get teleported there. There are still ways that you could theoretically get trapped, but I know that when I'm making the levels for the core game alone, then they're going to be kept in there, There'll also be a retry button for people trying other people's levels and they don't know about this, so just quite a few issues there that I had to kind of squash quite early in the development phase for this system. For level creation, I'll probably do it like Hitman in terms of you have to actually complete your made level to then be able to share it with other people. So as you can see, when the player actually uses the portal itself, 2 grayed out portals will spawn. These are just placeholders at the minute and they're not instantiated, they are object pooled, I think the term is. One's reflecting the X and one in the Y. The player then chooses the one that they want to teleport to. The player then moves into the portal that was spawned next to where the weapon was used, and they are teleported over there. This is a one-time use item, so I'm going to do it so the portal in the middle actually gets destroyed once you've used it. And also this was made with the intention that I can put in different portals in the level itself, so I can just use them more widely in level creation in general. Other people will be able to do this in the level creation system. Also, since the last devlog, I've taken part in the Blackthorn Prod #3jam, so if you're interested in checking out my entry, it's a procedurally generated gliding game, is the best way of describing it, and if you are interested in keeping up to date with the project and maybe interested in playing it once it's released, then there is a link in the description to wishlist it on Steam. I've also just seen recently that we've got past 100 wishlists on Steam, which is, I cannot thank everyone enough for showing support, it really does mean a lot. And if you are interested in keeping up to date with videos on the channel, then subscribing would be very much appreciated. Other than that, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next devlog.